On October 29th, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 plunged directly into the Java Sea shortly after takeoff. But the chain reaction that pulled that plane down did not start on the runway in Jakarta. It started 13 years earlier, inside a high-rise conference room in Chicago, when a group of executives made a choice about a spreadsheet metric.
That choice set off a structural rewrite of one of the greatest engineering icons in human history. Welcome to Club Genius, where common sense goes to battle against corporate nonsense. Before we dig into this investigation, take a quick second to hit subscribe or leave us a review. It really helps us bring you these deep dives every week.
Okay, so to understand how an airplane ends up fighting its own pilot, you have to go back to 2005. W. James McNerney Jr. takes over as CEO of Boeing. Now, McNerney was a veteran of General Electric, trained under Jack Welch, and he brought a very specific philosophy with him.
Yes, the classic Jack Welch playbook. Shift the focus from building great engineering products to engineering the stock price.
Exactly that. Under McNerney, Boeing launched a massive experiment for their new aircraft, the 787 Dreamliner. Instead of designing and building the airframe in-house, like they had done for decades, they decided to outsource giant sub-assemblies to suppliers all across the world.
Wait, so Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers were building massive pre-assembled sections of the plane and then shipping them to Everett, Washington to just bolt together?
Right. But when these massive carbon fiber fuselage sections arrived at the Everett plant, they literally did not fit together. Parts were misaligned. The supply chain fell into complete chaos. It led to years of delays and tens of billions of dollars in cost overruns.
So instead of admitting that outsourcing core engineering was a disaster, what did corporate leadership do?
They doubled down. They created a program delightfully named Partnering for Success, which basically meant telling their suppliers, hey, cut your prices by double-digit percentages or we blacklist you from all future contracts. And to squeeze labor costs even harder, they opened a non-union assembly facility in North Charleston, South Carolina.
And meanwhile, where was the money going? If it wasn't going into R&D or manufacturing quality, where did it go?
Over $30 billion went straight into share buybacks to pump up the stock price. McNerney took home tens of millions annually in performance bonuses. The financial metrics looked gorgeous on paper, while the physical factory floors were burning. Which raises a massive question. If the outsourced Dreamliner chaos cost tens of billions in overruns, why on earth did leadership double down on the exact same playbook when Airbus launched a competitor?
Because in 2015, Airbus announced the A320neo, a super fuel-efficient jet that started stealing Boeing's airline customers left and right. Enter Dennis Muhlenberg, the new CEO.
Now, Muhlenberg was actually an engineer by training, spent his whole career at Boeing, but he was operating entirely inside McNerney's financial box. Designing a brand new airplane from scratch would take 10 years and billions in R&D. Boeing could not wait. So, they decided to take their existing 737 frame, which was designed in the 1960s, and slap bigger, more efficient engines on it.
Wait, but if you put bigger engines on an old airframe, they don't fit under the wing, right?
They had to move the engines forward and slightly higher up on the wing, but that shifted the aerodynamics of the plane. Under steep climbs, the nose wanted to pitch up on its own, which could cause a stall. Now, if Boeing admitted the plane handled differently, airlines would have required pilots to undergo expensive simulator retraining, known as a new type rating. That would destroy the sales pitch.
So, to prevent pilots from needing simulator training, they wrote software to secretly fix the aerodynamic pitch in the background.
Yes, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS. And to keep it hidden, they wired MCAS to rely on just a single angle of attack sensor on the nose. One sensor. And then they literally erased any mention of MCAS from the pilot flight manuals.
A single point of failure on a commercial airliner? And the pilots did not even know the system existed?
They had no idea. So when a single sensor failed on Lion Air Flight 610 in 2018, and then again on Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 in 2019, MCAS thought the plane was pitching up when it wasn't. It forced the nose down. The pilots fought the controls, having no clue why the plane was fighting them back. 346 people lost their lives.
And what was happening inside the factories while engineers were raising alarms about these safety risks?
This is the part that hits me so hard. I remember working in high-pressure environments years ago, where if you spoke up about a glaring process flaw, management didn't thank you. They treated you like a traitor. At Boeing, quality control inspectors who reported structural defects or foreign object debris left inside fuselages were put on performance improvement plans. PIPs! They were systematically silenced, threatened, or pushed out of the company.
Reporting a safety hazard gets you put on a PIP because it threatens the schedule? That is pure clown shoe club logic.
It really is. Muhlenberg was ousted in December 2019 after the fleet was grounded worldwide. But here is the punchline. When he walked out the door, his severance package was valued at roughly $62 million in stock, pension, and assets. $62 million.
346 dead. A flagship fleet grounded globally, and the guy walks away with $62 million. Which brings us to the next mystery. After all of that public outrage, the new CEO steps in, promising a return to safety excellence. How does that renewed safety commitment lead to a mid-air explosion where 4 critical bolts just vanish?
January 5th, 2024. Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 is climbing through 16,000 feet over Oregon. Suddenly, a massive bang. A door plug on the side of the 737 MAX 9 blows completely off the aircraft, depressurizing the cabin instantaneously.
I remember those photos. A gaping hole in the side of a passenger plane at 16,000 feet.
When the National Transportation Safety Board investigated, they found something mind-boggling. The door plug had been removed for maintenance work at the Renton plant to fix defective rivets. When workers put the plug back in, they failed to reinstall 4 primary retaining bolts. 4 bolts. The plane was delivered to an airline and flown with passengers, literally missing the bolts holding the door on.
Under David Calhoun, the GE veteran board member who took over as CEO in 2020 to restore trust.
Right. Calhoun was brought in to stabilize the financials and unground the plane. But the pressure to push planes out the door to satisfy backlog quotas was so intense that basic safety steps were skipped. And look at the legal shield. Back in January 2021, Boeing signed a Deferred Prosecution Agreement, a DPA, with the Department of Justice to settle criminal fraud charges for hiding MCAS from the FAA.
How much was the fine?
A $2.5 billion total settlement. But the actual criminal fine was only $243.6 million. The rest was customer compensation and a crash victim fund. And, crucial point, the DPA explicitly shielded senior executives from individual criminal prosecution. In 2024, the Department of Justice found Boeing had breached that agreement, and Boeing agreed to plead guilty to corporate fraud conspiracy. But Calhoun? He stepped down with $32.8 million in total compensation for 2023 alone.
So if you step back and look at the whole picture over 20 years, this isn't just a story about a bad software line or 4 missing bolts. It's a story about what happens when financial engineering completely replaces product engineering.
That is the fundamental mental shift. We tend to view air disasters as tragic, isolated technical failures. A bad sensor, a loose nut, a manufacturing defect. But when executive compensation, stock buybacks, and supplier cost cuts become the primary metrics of success, the system itself becomes designed to fail. The missing bolts were just the ultimate physical symptom of a corporate framework that prioritized short-term stock metrics over human life.
So here is today's Club Genius lesson. If a system rewards leaders for short-term numbers while insulating them from the actual operational outcomes, the system will eventually break in the real world. When metrics replace quality, reality always collects the debt.
Well said. All right, that is it for us today. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.